make? Do we adjust her feet right now? Just do what needs to be done? Or do we do small incremental changes over time? Hi, I'm Margaret. I work with horses from a bodywork and osteopathic lens. And in this series, what's actually wrong with this horse, I break down real cases so that you can see the problems that actually are missed and develop and what's going on with all of that. So in the last episode, we talked a bit about a horse that had already been to Worlds, but I got called out to make sure that she was just feeling comfortable. And the reality is she was far from comfortable. She had a lot of things going on in her body. So I highly recommend you go back and watch those first few episodes of this series and see all of the background information, because at this point we made the decision to go ahead and just make the changes that needed to be made to bring her feet into balance. And this was a tough one, but here's what fed into it. Okay. So when we look at her whole body and her history of injury, when she was a foal, having her right hind really opened up. I mean, she's still 8 years later, got all of this scar tissue there. And then also having her withers crushed, that changed how her feet developed. And not only did she have negative palmar angles in 3 of her feet, she also had high-low going on, which was 100% because of the way her body was compensating from that injury all those years ago as a foal. But the thing is that when the body compensates for a long period of time, neurologically things change too. Neural pathways create body movement patterns, and to fix those body movement patterns, we have to first remove all signs of pain, and then we have to teach the body how to move again. The thing is that her body literally grew differently to accommodate during these movement patterns from her original injuries. Okay. So this had snowballed to the point where she does not want to be touched in her pecs. Her shoulders are extremely sore. I mean, her withers were crushed. Of course her shoulders are sore. Yes, that was 8 years ago at the time. But again, it changed her whole movement pattern. So she wasn't using her front end properly. Add to that, she's got a high heel on one side and a low heel on the other. That also changes her shoulders and how her muscles are holding. That changes how her neck is able to support her body. This also, with the negative palmar angles in her feet, which are the coffin bone angles, that also impacted how her hind end was able to move. All of the pieces are connected. And when we take a horse and we try and piece them out, what ends up happening is that we're only seeing symptoms, and we can solve a symptom, but we're not solving for the whole problem. So additionally to all these other things that are going on to her body, one of the things that I noticed right off the get when I saw her was that she had a difference in temporal muscles. So right on top of her head, she's got the left side was really built up and the right side was just flat. And that is an indication, because they are involved in chewing, those muscles are involved in chewing, it's an indication that she's not chewing balanced from side to side. However, when I asked about it, I already had a dentist that had identified the problem, and I thought, oh, good. So they've already straightened out her teeth, so this should start to, kind of go back to normal. The thing is they found that problem 2 years ago, and it's still there. So what that told me was that the problem in her facial facial muscle symmetry was actually tied to the rest of what was going on in her body. And it lined up with all of the other patterns we were seeing, the right hind to left front compensation pattern that changed the way her feet grew. Also, left front in her temporal muscle, like that left temporal muscle was bigger. And so making the decision to change her feet now. One, we had a great farrier. I recommended him. He was not the farrier they were originally using. I recommended him because he looks at the whole horse as well. He evaluates gait every time. He's willing to try different things. He's willing to use different types of shoes. He's willing to use composite or metal or padding or whatever is available to him. He's going to use it for the benefit of the horse. And if your horse isn't comfortable and he feels like they should be, he's going to come back out and make a change, because that's what's required. And so we worked with him, and, we knew that we had 2 options. We can do this and we can let her feet gradually change. It's going to take, a year or more. I mean, somewhere in there, it's going to take a lot of trim cycles to get where we need with these front feet in particular. The negative palmar angles and plantar angles like that, That could be fixed relatively quickly. But the big issue with her front feet not being level at all, really, that was going to take some time. It was going to take several trim cycles to get us to a nice place. And what that would mean is that she would continue to have these poor movement patterns that were contributing to her pain, that were contributing to her imbalanced muscle movements, that all of that was going to continue. This horse has already been living in this body in this way for 8 years. So we made the decision that it was best for her to, yes, increase her pain for 2 weeks, but for 2 weeks, I mean, it's an estimate, right? You never know. It's a gamble. You never know how it's going to last, but it did last about 2 weeks where she was just really, really uncomfortable in her feet. And then, but it wasn't just her feet either. Let me get to that. And then 2 weeks later, she was so much better because we didn't just fix the feet and leave everything else the same. The farrier came in, made dramatic change, and we upped the bodywork frequency because the change in her feet, it wasn't so much that it made her foot sore. It wasn't so much that. We did a lot to make sure that she wasn't foot sore. It was everything above the feet. All of a sudden, she had gone from standing like this, like up high, down low, to leveled out. That doesn't just change the feet. It changes how her shoulders were sitting. It changes how her pecs were supporting the entire front end of her body. It changes how her front end connects to her hind end. It changes what's going on neurologically. All these movement patterns that she had are suddenly not familiar and uncomfortable because the structure that she was standing on had shifted. So when we made this decision, it was with the knowledge that, yes, she's going to be uncomfortable, but we can help mitigate that pain for 2 weeks and then watch as she gets more and more and more comfortable than she has ever been. And let me just tell you, she was really uncomfortable for 2 weeks. And then she wasn't anymore. She started being friendly, not cranky. This mare who had been marish her whole life, all of a sudden was pleasant. And people were like, who is this? What's happening? This is a horse that feels good in her body, who didn't know that feeling good in her body was a possibility. And we made it happen for her. Additionally, this horse has already been to Worlds. They really weren't super concerned about her. They didn't understand what was happening in her body, that she was on her way to a breakdown and fast. And when we made the intervention, what came of that really surprised everyone. I know that I know what the goal is. I know what the end result that we're going for is because I'm the one that's seeing where the imbalances are and trying to help us get to that perfect balance position. But it's still always surprising. It's still always exciting. It's still always so fulfilling and gratifying to hear from a client that her horse is moving better than she's ever moved in her entire life. And that's from a horse that already went to Worlds and was already competing at an upper level. And she was somehow moving better because her body was able to optimally function. This is so powerful. When we evaluate a horse from the whole horse perspective and we stop limiting to a certain symptom and fixing this problem and expecting there not to be another one in response, we start to see real change because what has to happen is following an order of operations. And in this case, it was correcting her foundation, her feet, so that the rest of her body could ripple out and change, so that her face could eventually find symmetry and she could stop probably having headaches. Because I'm just going out on a limb, but she was always cranky and pinning her ears and she doesn't want her face touched either. She's probably not comfortable there. I know she had TMJ tension. All of it was contributing. All of it was all part of this one incident that happened when she was a foal and then compounded out from there. And when we look at the brain science behind it, the neurology, the cellular structures that go into it, it makes perfect sense. Her body was creating the situation it needed. It was a solution. The pain that she was in was always from creating trying to take one problem and creating a solution through moving differently. And when that happens, eventually that compensation, that moving differently, is going to create a problem in the structure that was compensating, which is exactly what happened with this horse, which is why it's so important to follow the order of operations and stop chasing symptoms. So when it comes down to it, the biggest issue with this mare was her feet. and the imbalance there. There were a lot of other contributing factors, things that screamed louder and got a lot of other people's attention. But that was none of those things, none of those loud sirens, none of those screams from her body or, muscular imbalances were things that were going to solve a problem for her. It all had to come from her feet. So that is what was actually wrong with this horse.